Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb. I am the redneck. You bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to get you to do it too. And as we always do on this program, when we say go green, we're not talking about mere environmentalism. We're talking about deep ecology, the interconnectedness of all of life. And whether you come at that from a eco-spiritual feminist perspective, or you come at that from the framework of hard Western science, or like me, you say those are perfectly valid ways to see the world. I'm here to tell you, we are all connected in this web of life. Whatever we do to this web, we are ultimately doing to ourselves. And frankly, y'all, we doing it wrong. We are literally destroying and commodifying Mother Earth faster than she can replenish herself. The window to do something about that is rapidly closing, and we are creating a racist, sexist, class oppressive world order with the plunder and pillage of Mother Earth. And that's why we do this program, Redneck Gone Green, to bring you voices and stories of people who are not merely describing a problem, but are on the ground in their own communities, making the world a better place. And our point is to try to better connect that. And with that, let's bring in our co-host, Shane Knight. Brother, how you doing today?
Today, I'm doing okay. It is a Monday after all, and it's been a nice weekend. My personal life, like you like to say, my personal life's good, but the rest of it, I'm glad we do this.
Hey, it's a hell of a thing, and it's Shane. Whenever we are friends, right? So I know that you have a really great life. You know, I've got a really great life. We're both doing meaningful, productive work for which we are respected by people we respect, hated by our class enemies, and honestly, ever more by the petty bourgeoisie liberals who hate to hear our truth telling. But pause. I'm kind of terrified by what's going on.
Man, I am too, and pissed off.
That's right. Both terrified and angry. And with that, let's take this opportunity, because our good friends over at the Democracy Collaborative and Milicia Figueroa always put together a video update for the great thing that they do called Tracking the Crisis. I love that tagline, Shane. We read the news so you don't have to. So y'all, we're about to play that, but I do want to say there is a weekly email that goes deep on all of these and more. I think it's one of the best aggregators I've seen. So join me in subscribing to Tracking the Crisis. I will drop that into the comments section for folks to take a look at. In the meantime, Shane, let's play that video.
Welcome to this week's Tracking the Crisis, a weekly news roundup of Trump administration actions and movement responses. On Tuesday, September 30th, over 800 of the armed forces' top brass were summoned to Quantico, Virginia, for an awkward meeting that was encapsulated by the viral phrase, "This could have been an email." Self-proclaimed Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announced a series of sweeping reforms to military fitness and grooming standards via what many described as an embarrassing rant about fat troops and woke DEI ideology. He then outlined his vision for a more aggressive and lethal military and dismissed international laws against war crimes, laying out an ultimatum for military leaders to get on board or resign. Trump, who joined the lineup in a last-minute announcement, had to ask for applause from the audience before launching into an hour-long, factually questionable political speech that took an ominous turn around 44 minutes in, as he told generals to prepare for a war against the enemy from within, using a direct quote from Joseph McCarthy as he announced his intent to use U.S. cities as training grounds to target domestic enemies. ICE repression tactics appear to have escalated since Trump's executive order against the radical left went into effect, as agents have begun targeting activists and journalists in addition to detaining migrants. Overnight on Tuesday, September 30th, armed federal agents in military gear rappelled from helicopters to raid an entire apartment building in the predominantly black South Shore neighborhood. Traumatized residents described dozens of agents breaking down doors and ransacking apartments, pointing guns in residents' faces, dragging naked children out of their beds and zip tying them to each other before loading them onto unmarked moving trucks. Residents returning to their destroyed homes reported that personal items were stolen, including electronics and furniture. DHS claimed that 37 people were arrested in what they claimed was a raid targeting Tren de Agua gang members. Among the detainees were 4 children who are U.S. citizens. People around the world tuned in to the live stream of the Global Samud Flotilla this week as nearly 500 activists from 57 countries on the 44-vessel humanitarian aid fleet sailed past the intersection points of previous aid flotillas, coming closer to Palestinian waters than all previous attempts to break the Israeli blockade. 470 activists aboard the flotilla were abducted by Israeli forces from international waters. Out of the 44 boats, just one, the Mikeno, is believed to have broken through and actually reached Palestinian territorial waters, coming within just 9 nautical miles of Gaza's coast before being intercepted by Israeli military forces. Emergency protests began to break out across Europe as the Freedom Flotilla Coalition condemned Israel for illegally kidnapping activists in international waters in violation of maritime law. On October 2nd, mass protests erupted around the world in support of the flotilla, as dock workers from across Europe and both sides of the Mediterranean met in Genoa to plan a continent-wide strike to block Israeli shipments and agitate for an end to the genocide. That's it for this week's Tracking the Crisis. Read more by signing up for our weekly news roundup in your email every Friday at trackingthecrisis.org. Back to you, David and Shane.
Woof, Shane. Damn. I mean, it feels like every week there's just more and more. I got to say,
Every week, man. It's like every damn hour.
right? I love it. You don't like my music, which, by the way, is a fantastic moniker to be using on the Democracy at Work platform. Said, time to put away that Statue of Liberty. Time to put it in storage. I could not agree with you more. You don't like my music. I mean, what we're seeing here, I mean, awkward only begins to describe that meeting, Shane. And to me, right? I mean, like, look, I want to ask your opinion because I watched that and I watched, these are generals, right? These are folks who have gone to West Point. These are people who have been steeped and trained in the separation of civilian versus military and under civilian command. And they take that oath of to the Constitution, I think, very seriously. And again, I'm an anti-imperialist. I am no fan of the U.S. military. But my read, Shane, I reckon that Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd may have crossed the Rubicon here.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch the whole thing, but there were several things that I, as a veteran myself, wanted to see was the reaction, because it's going to be a fucking circus. Or a clown show at best, but I had no idea how bad it was actually going to be. And to be fair, it wasn't just the officer ranks. We are also the high-ranking enlisted gentlemen and women that serve in the military, such as Master Chief of the Air Force, Master Chief of the Navy, Master Sergeant of the Army, Master Sergeant of the Marine Corps. I saw all of their faces sitting there, and it was, for me, a relief to see the enlisted men looking the most appalled. Firstly. Secondly, one other thing that I want to point out is, Mel, I'm glad she mentioned it in the video where she said Trump had to ask for applause. Like, yeah, he came in and said something to the effect of like, oh, it's the quietest room I've ever walked in. Yeah, fat boy. Because it is. They did, and I believe they did this as a coordinated tactic to show a sense of solidarity with one another and against them by not saying a word, not uttering one echo of an applause. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but after the meeting, there were several reports come out that they began actually referring to the commander-in-chief and little war boy as fat man and little boy. So yeah, I mean, it was a shit show, and I agree with you. I think they may have crossed the Rubicon and pissed off a lot of people, because that's disrespect and the hogwashery by which Hegseth or Keg Seth, I guess, as people like to call him, was bloviating about was not. It was embarrassing. It was an embarrassment, and to have all of them in one room, that was also stupid.
So Rebecca Lurie, again, both a guest and frequent contributor here on the program, writes in, when will even they, that is the generals, say what we all know? The emperor has no clothes. And I got to say, saying again, like people who know me know that I have what they call an optimism bias. Part of that is because a happy coincidence of how my brain is operated. The other part of that is because I had the great privilege of being just raised by Mama, Papa, and my mama with love. And all I ever knew in my formative years that the world was a safe and good place. So I just always think that things are going to work out, Shane. So I will say that. But in addition to that moment with what Mel reported with ICE and the level of overextension there that I think we saw. Greg Dunn writes in, if the disgusting display of naked authoritarianism in Chicago doesn't generate protests, we're doomed. Greg, I'm happy to tell you it is in fact generating protests. The corporate media is not covering it, but all of my colleagues and comrades in Chicago are telling me that there's a level of mutual aid and support happening. Even as people are in fact being terrorized, the citizens are standing up. There's a great video in Portland where the Portland police actually told an ICE agent, you're not driving through there. The ICE agent said, well, I need to anyway. And the Portland police officer said, if you move that vehicle one more inch, you will be arrested. Now, just saying, again, what we're looking at is a level of pushback. And you don't like my music, right? Said ICE is basically a massive jobs program for unemployed alcoholic racists. Well said. By the way,
also make sure it's men. It's men.
That's right.
It's for displaced, lonely, angry men.
And it's really, let's be honest, like what Trump is doing is trying to create a group of brown shirts under ICE, because I don't think the military or the National Guard are following along with him. This is all to say that with Trump, I am reminded of McCarthy and that great moment where the turning point happened during some of those hearings. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but in one of the hearings, one of the lawyers just stops, puts his pen down, looks McCarthy right in the eye and says, have you no sense of decency left, sir? At the end of the day, have you no sense of decency left?
Yeah.
And like literally within a month, the whole thing came crumbling. Again, I'm not looking for a magic bullet. I'm not looking for magic beans. I'm telling you this. I think that we are seeing a level of response from multiple spaces, both in the law and in the people. And it's up to us as ordinary people to add our voice to the chorus. We need to use our social media. We need to call into talk radio. We need to light up our email list. We need to do anything and everything that we can. And with that, I just want to conclude with, Shane, as horrific as it is to watch the Israeli Defense Forces and their internationally illegal reaction, that Freedom Flotilla is filling me with such hope and optimism to see people, ordinary people, sometimes medical care providers, sometimes journalists, sometimes human rights activists, sometimes just ordinary folks, artists and cultural workers. Shout out to both Greta and Carsey Blanton, one of my favorite musicians, and trying to bring food and water in. And Shane, already, I don't know if you caught this, another Freedom Flotilla is already under sail. Medicine and food is already underway. Something is happening.
Well, big time. I was really encouraged by the protests and the outcry internationally. I mean, I was watching the protests in Italy when it started to break out. And I was so, okay, see this? That's what we got to do here in the streets, everybody.
Again, amazing courage and inspiration to us all. And I'll tell you, Shane, I am really excited to bring our guest on because another example of inspiration. The folks over at Women Building Up are doing something profound, and I can't wait to bring Kim Westcott into this conversation. I want to welcome Kim Westcott into the conversation. Kim is a staff member over at Women Building Up. I'll let her talk about it. I'm also going to confess is a dear and cherished personal friend, but this is the first time she's been on the program. So Kim Westcott, welcome to Redneck Gone Green.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Shane. This is what a lovely introduction. Thank you. Wow. Well, I'm awfully happy to be here with you. And let me see. What can I tell you?
Well, listen, let me do this because I know you, but perhaps many members of our audience do not. So before we get into the work at Women Building Up, and I promise you we're going to do that, we want to just delve a little bit into Kimberly Westcott, the human being. So I'm going to ask you to think about and almost put you on the spot a little bit and ask you, what are some of the experiences that shaped you when you were growing up as a child to that might have been an indication that you were on a trajectory like this?
What a lovely question. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I guess I really have to start with my mom. I'm very, very close with my mom. Just a little context. She is a child of the Great Migration. Her mom brought her family. She was a single mother who came up from the Arkansas-Texas border, and that they went to extended family networks till they got to Chicago. And basically, mom decided she wanted to be an actress, and she somehow managed to come to New York very young, probably under 16. And she actually made her way and did some work and, just put her whole heart and purpose into everything that she's done and continues to do in her life. Some of the earliest memories I have, in terms of maybe the community building aspect of why I so enjoyed being in the theater around my mom in rehearsals, behind backstage when she was doing work, was it just felt like, you're around a bunch of people. Most of them had a sense of purpose. They enjoyed a lot of what they were doing. And I just remember feeling really welcomed and loved. And I couldn't get enough. I loved it. And so that's an anchoring feeling for me in terms of what community can be with people. And, my mom, at some point, there came a time when she did leave the theater and she got herself involved, as I knew thinking about her as a person, in social work and legal advocacy related social work and just activism. And so, looking at all the different systems, adoption, family regulation, she was at the Legal Aid Society for almost 25 years in the Criminal Defense Division, just all the exclusions, all the ways in which people, if you just want to be able to fully participate and have a way to live, all the things that were not happening for people. And, we talk a lot. It was pretty much nonstop in terms of just from our family in Chicago, people that, in the community, things that just weren't happening. What were those things? What would we need? And, I also was very interested in utopian, dystopian novels. And I was really interested, like, well, what can society and what can we as people do here? And so I feel between my mom and, having some loving people around, and my aunt who was also in the theater, and being able to get involved locally with some activism. And in particular, interestingly, David, I remember canvassing for NYPIRG, and back in New York, the issues were kind of on the environmental side. It was shutting down incinerators and also shutting down diesel bus depots that were disproportionately placed near communities of color. And I started to read about Bob Bullard and started to read about dumping in Dixie. And I was very interested then because I really wasn't that interested in law.
Well, but before we go into that, you said a lot, Kim, and I want to take this moment first of all to say, because my wife is a theater kid at 62 years old, right? She still self-identifies as a theater kid. It doesn't surprise me at all that you were a theater kid. I mean, I got to say, if stage managers, librarians ran the world, we'd be in a whole lot better shape, right?
Right.
And if you want to see anybody who can just get shit done with very little things, ask a theater kid. They know how to make things happen. So doesn't surprise me. Also, as like an unapologetic mama's boy myself, it makes my heart happy and sing to hear you lift up your mama as well. And I want to take a moment to lift up what you described with the Great Migration. So if folks don't know, the Great Migration was that period of time when literally hundreds of thousands of African Americans moved to northern cities or to California to escape the horrific Jim Crow racial violence and discrimination that they were experiencing. And Chicago especially, there was something called the Chicago Defender newspaper that was literally being a labor recruiter to put out opportunities to invite African Americans to come to Chicago as a destination spot. And that level of migration really is one of the reasons that Chicago is such a great city. And then from Chicago, it went up to Detroit and into Ohio and New York City. So I really want to thank you as well, Kim, for referencing the Great Migration.
No, thank you for bringing that out. Yeah, that's 100%.
So the last thing before we go on, you use the phrase NYPIRG. Now, I know that means New York Public Interest Research Group. And again, one of our longtime listeners has asked you if you would talk a little bit about some of your influences. And I feel like you've already started to do that a little bit, but let's actually then take that from the young woman that you were to some of the influences as you began to achieve that kind of consciousness.
Wow, what terrific questions. Wow, let me think on this. Well, there was so much swimming around, and at that time I think I was pretty open. I was reading Hermann Hesse and wondering about life and wandering around on the street and just trying to encounter people and see what people's experiences were. And then, as I got closer to trying to really meet the mark, I mean, theater wasn't going to be my home because in part, as much as I loved it, it was I got a strong rebuke that, the purpose behind a lot of what I was doing in the education, was to serve something, and so that's really where I ended up making the transition into law school. But during that time, Bob Bullard, later Angela Davis, reading, Are Prisons Obsolete? A tiny little book that has so much going on. Cornell West, people that were looking at different systems, really interested in intersectional ways of looking at things. Maybe because even though the laws seem to be about countering things in the way that you frame them, to quote a friend that I know, it's appealing to think about what you can build, what you can be for. And so those frameworks and knowing kind of what they do, and then thinking about different tools and how you can get around those frameworks became really interesting to me. And then I guess that's what really prompted me, in addition to wanting to be closer to the community, that was social work. That was about being more involved directly.
And was there a moment when you realized that both social work and community building work was kind of the path? Because clearly that was a shift.
Gosh, I wish I could say there was a moment. It wasn't a moment. It was probably me trying to move away from the little narrow confines of what I knew to be the law. And I appreciate the understanding of the system, and I really do appreciate my experience in it. But the role, I was looking to be much more directly involved with the community. And so just trying to get a better perspective, get more involved directly learn about, if it wasn't through the volunteering or being part of some agencies and internships, it just felt like I needed to be much more directly involved.
And you were a practicing lawyer doing advocacy work for several years, but you didn't find that satisfying. Say more about that.
You're trying to bait me, aren't you?
Not to bait you. Remember, I too was a lawyer
Well,
who
I
went to
know.
hospital to fight for justice. And I
No.
like to joke, I'm a recovering lawyer now.
Well, I think from my perspective, it's like, okay, if you're going to read about the theory and then practice protecting the barriers and boundaries for that theory, you're still remiss and removed from the actual experience of the thing that you were trying to advocate for. So I feel you on like wanting to sort of take a journeyman's experience to the other side to get a better understanding, because that's really at the end of the day where you garner the most empathy. And that informs one's own sense of self-identification and sort of helping you define meaning in something.
I really appreciate that. That's far more evolved in the way of thinking than I was thinking at the time. To try to answer your question, David, I respect law. I mean, I respect the training. I know some fantastic lawyers. My husband's a terrific lawyer. Trial attorneys, God bless them. These are people that know how to speak to people. And if it's about people, I like it. The thing that how can I put it? When I came up, everyone thought that law was going to be the engine of social change. It was Thurgood Marshall, Thurgood Marshall, Thurgood Marshall. It was just like, get on the bus. And so it seemed like for someone who had some access to education and some resources, it was a darn good place for me to put myself. But, obviously we see the courts have been captured. We've seen really that this is something that even before I came to understand that, it felt too much like in the framing position. And I respect it. It's just not for me. I feel I wish I'd spent more time as an organizer. I think those are people that really know what to do. And to be able to support them is tremendous. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm so glad you said that. And Shane, thanks for that kind of reminder, right, around the law, because, to me, look at here, y'all. When I was practicing law, I think I was occasionally able to get individual justice for some individual folks, but that the problem was the system. The system of law is designed, and Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said it well. If you want justice, look to the courts of heaven, but on earth, the courts are only concerned with consistency. And that's supposed to be used to talk about how good it is that law is applied evenly. But really, what it means is the law consistently serves the interest of the predatory class. The law consistently because we have a racist, sexist, and class oppressive society, the law is used to defend and support that. And for far too many people who came of age during that glimpse of a moment of Thurgood Marshall, there was an incorrect assumption that the courts were going to be the catalyst of social justice and change. The reality is, for the entire history of the United States, the legal system, the court system, the law has always been used to exploit and oppress and justify it. So to me, I'm looking at, as you just said so accurately and astutely, Kim, community organizers from the bottom and the left up. We need to do politics and our activism from the ground up, as Rebecca Lurie has said in the chat. And that is a perfect introduction, I think, to women building up, because I know, of course, you serve as a staff member of Women Building Up. So I want you to take a moment to back up, just as you did as Kimberly Westcott, the human, to tell us the story. What is Women Building Up and how did it get started?
Thank you. Okay. Well, I have to tell you, I am so proud to be in the position to work with Women Building Up and to serve this particular organization. And I can say it, having made the bridge as you did kindly, to think of me as a human before you plugged me into this. So, you know, I've waited my whole life to work in a situation where I wasn't volunteering for the movement, but actually directly trying to support movement work. This has been an aspiration of mine for a very, very long time. And the beauty of Women Building Up is it really is something that came with some interesting twists and turns, I will say, as something out of movement. And so I'll just start and say that Women Building Up is a community organization. This is the way we describe the mission that advances women, girls, and gender expansive people directly impacted by carceral systems. And so when we talk about that, it's beyond just thinking of the punishment system and thinking about, it's networks of power, and it can deal with other aspects. It could be the family regulation system. It could be it's broader, but we focus very specifically on formerly incarcerated women because there's so few resources that are directed to formerly incarcerated women and girls. And we do this by really supporting grassroots organizations and community groups that are trying to do this kind of work. And that can include collectives, it can include kitchen table activists, it can include any number. But the aim is to resource the movement this way. And we have a couple of focus points that we've kind of centered around, and one of which is mental and physical well-being and economic power, building economic power, and changing narratives, as part of that. And so the really great thing about Women Building Up's story is maybe about 2012. I don't know if folks all know about Hurricane Sandy, but in New York City, there was a prison called Bayview, and it's on the far west side of Manhattan. And it housed still some women there. And interestingly, Hurricane Sandy flooded it out, which was kind of the universe giving it an opportunity to evacuate these women, which they did. And what came together as a result was kind of an intersectional movement response of women. We're talking across formerly incarcerated, gender expansive, women laborers, women in the traditional women's movement. They all came together and they're like, look, let's think about this. Why are we resourcing this so-called rehabilitation by punishment and putting people in a deprivation box? Why are we committing to this? Is there not an opportunity to transform this in the way of what people were starting to really think about, healing and resourcing and growth? And it picked up. It really picked up. These women, they were on fire. These were fierce, fierce advocates and activists. They went out and they did block parties. They met with legislators. They met with their community members. They were all over the place, basically putting this out. And they attracted the attention of a funder, because if you're thinking about not rehabilitating, scratch that, transforming a 200,000 square foot space, that's a big undertaking. And they did. They attracted one, and they committed to supporting the project. And this went on for a while. And then, as you can envision, there were some twists and turns based on just the cost overruns, really. And the funder pulled away from the project, which was really devastating to the movement of women that were working, because it wasn't just pulling away from that project, it was also moving away from funding in the area of women, which they were major funder for that time. So that was a tough stretch. But I will say this, that funder did something pretty remarkable, and they had a foundation office they had just built. It was renovated in downtown Brooklyn. It was a daytop village. And they had just been in that office for about 7 months. And what they did is they gave that 19,000 square foot building to the movement, which is pretty remarkable. And yeah.
Before you go like that, I definitely want to like let that sink in for a moment.
Yeah.
And I want to take this moment to lift up something that I heard from you about formerly incarcerated people, and especially women. And that is the so-called, quote, prison industrial complex is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. This system is not broken. It's literally designed to funnel poor people, especially people of color, into cages so that corporations can make money off of their bodies. So this pipeline is intentional, it is racist, it is sexist, it is fundamentally an aspect of capitalism. So, Kimberly, to me, part of the reason I'm so excited about what Women Building Up doing is that women who are in fact impacted by that carceral system, by that racist and sexist and class oppressive system, are actually at the very core and center of what Women Building Up is doing.
So much. Well, 100%. I'm going to tip my hat to everything you said, because that is absolutely 250,000% true. I mean, without going back on the history, we know we come from an extractive system, chattel slavery, the whole nine. That's punishment. And we're seeing it in spades, and it's expanding to different communities, same purpose. But I will say, to continue this story and to agree with you, we were fortunate because once we got the building, this is the final phase of the story, and they'd given some money to have this core group of women who became the Committee of 50, formerly incarcerated, this cross-section of women, to determine what they wanted to do. You know, was it to build an organization, to resource, in what way, you know, think about the vision of the place. And they basically worked with the Tides Foundation, and they developed a 501c3. And to get to where we are today, which was really last year, 2024, they hired our inaugural executive director, Susan Shaw, which was tremendous. And then she brought on some of us in 24 and in 25 to basically expand the ability to support the movement, you know, to build up the organization. I will say we've been in strategic planning and organizational development, trying to build the plane while flying it a little. And so we're now at the point where we're in the position to sort of get more directly involved. And I will say one of the great things that happened this year, just to, they released $2 million in grants, which I think is a huge thing for our community at this time, to get that money out to women. So that's where we are.
So, Kimberly, when you say they released $2 million in grants, who is the they? And tell us a little more about that story, because that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Well, they, forgive my lack of precision. They is us, in that, you know, WBU has some assets, one of which is the building at 401 State Street, another of which are some funds that were committed and continue to be coming, you know, in the pipeline from that funder to support whatever it is that this organization initially planned to do. And it is very clearly on point that it's grant making is a major piece of this to get the resources out the door to the women in the movement. And then there are other aspects of this, some of the work that I support, collaboration and capacity building in the building and growth and development. And then, you know, there may be some opportunities for the way the building is used, for co-working, for how we support organizations that are doing this work. But that money was released by WBU to the grantees.
And so again, because Kimberly, I knew that the we was actually Women Building Up, and you were being so humble about it that I wanted to really lift it up and say that they is actually us and we at Women Building Up. And Kim, I also you know, you've really been generating a lot of great comments. We try to keep up with them as we go, but Wild Bill makes a comment that I want you to react to. Wild Bill says, we still have slavery. It's in our Constitution. It exists in our penal system. Until that is written out of the Constitution, the exploitation of slaves will continue. That resonates for me, but I wanted to hear how that landed for you as somebody who works in community engagement with Women Building Up.
Sure. Well, that resonates with me too. And I can speak for myself, and these everyone has an intersection point, and women building up may not have the exact same intersection points, but I think everyone in our movement knows that the extraction that goes on in prison, is really, people know it's part of the 13th Amendment, but to be honest with you, looking at the way the law just, you can burn the law and it's about power at this point. I think it's really, how do you break the hold over people by these institutions, and they've been established. And so I think there needs to be a major shift in terms of what we do with people, that people should not be in cages. That's my view. It's not necessarily Women Building Up's view, but I think many agree. And that as long as we have a hierarchical society that is grounded in race and class and dealing with other form patriarchy, other ways of excluding people, making them, the fodder for other people's, energy extraction, you have a system almost like a factory built around the same time with penitentiaries that are going to do just this thing.
To me, what you're describing is what folks that I work with call the abolitionist framework, which is a call to dismantle systems of oppression, which includes prisons, policing, racialized capitalism, and replace them with structures that foster care, safety, and community well-being. So to me, what I love about an abolitionist framework, it is both destructive and constructive. Tear down institutions that are causing harm, build new ones that are rooted in justice, accountability, and mutual aid. So abolition is not just about ending punishment, but about creating conditions where punishment is no longer necessary. And like, I'll tell you this, Kimberly, I can go into any pool hall or bowling alley in this country, and I don't have to, like, I can break it down without dumbing it down, right? I don't have to use some of the highfalutin words that some folks use on the left, but I can talk to any good, solid redneck with a decent heart and talking about how this system, the boss man has his boot on our neck. And I don't know about you, but I've about had it and I'm fed up. And Shane, I know you can do it too, right? Like,
oh yeah,
all we have to do is get past this neoliberal bullshit, and ordinary folk are with us.
With you. I hope that is 100% true. I believe it in my guts. But so much of what we've all been indoctrinated with is sort of creating yourself in the center and having people pushed out to the margins. And so people don't want to be pushed out. And so even if they understand that it doesn't serve them, the insulation of another group, I guess momentarily feels better. They're not in the pit. I'm not in the pit, but they are.
Kimberly, that is such an astute observation. And I think what you've done for me is at a laser beam point out why fascism both works for people and why it's a lie. Because at the end of the day, fascism is about an us versus them. And the them are the bad actors. The them are, fill in the blank. They're the people of color, or they're the immigrants, or they're the trans people. They're the they, right? And that they are the problem. When in point of fact, they are the real minority, or the 0.5%, the oligarchs, the billionaire class, who are keeping us separated. And I'm going to say it plainly and simply. The reality is that there are more of us than there are of them. I have way more in common as an ordinary person with people who do not have my pigmentation or do not have my worldview, like whether it is in an inner city or in rural America or the suburbs themselves. Ordinary folk who are being exploited and oppressed have more in common with each other than we do with the predatory class. And I mean, that includes both Democrats and Republicans who are in service of the neoliberal empire and in service of capitalism. And it's about time that we figured out that we're going to have to work together to get collectively free. That's how I see it, Kimberly.
No, you're speaking my language. I love it because, two things. I mean, is going to take me off the charts here. But the first thing is, whenever people want to create false connection points, we saw it with the slave patrol back when they were trying to basically have white people who were maybe one step up from indentured servitude and give them something so that they had a place to identify with whatever the emerging whiteness was back at that time, maybe in the late 1600s. And that's one ploy. But then, forgive me for going to the Matrix, which I love. It's like, if you go back and think about all those people that have been extracted from, and literally are pods, and then you got one group of, the way the directors put it out there, cross-racial, cross-identity people that figured out they were being extracted from, that's kind of where we're at. When do we kind of wake that up and sort of try to pull ourselves away from that system?
You know what? I'm so glad, like you, I love the Matrix. And
Me
I want to
too.
remind folks that
Right.
as brilliant and beautiful a film as the Matrix is, and it is fantastic, it's also can be understood to be a retelling of Bacon's Rebellion in 16.
Oh, Bacon's Rebellion. Yes. Okay.
Right? I mean, here
Okay.
we
There
are,
you go.
colonial Virginia, an example of very early cross-racial solidarity before the United States even existed. Poor white indentured servants and enslaved Africans united together in resistance against the colonizing elite who monopolized land and power. They shared an absolute anger at the economic exploitation. They were able, at least in that moment, to bridge racial divisions. They revealed the potential where real class-based alliance could come. And that Bacon's Rebellion terrified the ruling class,
Oh, yeah.
who
Oh, yeah.
responded by codifying in law racialized laws to divide Black and white laborers. This
right.
deliberate creation of a racial hierarchy was meant to destroy that solidarity, to institutionalize the concept of white supremacy. So this is not me trying to justify like whiteness. I think people with my pigment are some of the most confused human beings about how the system actually works. What I'm saying is, just as Bell Hooks in her classic treatise, Understanding Patriarchy, begins by saying patriarchy harms men, that's not to center men. That is to say to men, you are being harmed by patriarchy. And even as you're being privileged by it. And as a white person with my pigment, I'm going to say, I know white skin privilege exists. I know I benefit from white skin privilege, and white supremacy hurts white people. It comes at a terrible cost. It is a bad deal. In other words, it asks us, indeed, it forces us to give up our humanity, to give up our genuine ethnicity. It asks us to give up the idea of being Irish or Scottish or Swedish or whatever it is, and instead to just be generically white and get to be against them. I'll say it again. White supremacy privileges people with my pigment, and it harms us. It is a bad deal.
It's 100%. Okay, bad deal, sure thing. And as you got it, if you've got people who are willing to say, in a very bipolar way, good, bad, you can die, you shouldn't, your sexuality or your procreative ability should be controlled or eliminated, and you shouldn't, if it's eugenics or whatever it is. The idea is you still keep the noose. If you change who goes in the noose, that's fine. But that noose, if you've elected to identify with the system with the noose, that noose is still there for you.
Man, so well said. Look at here,
That is
Kimberly.
very
I'm
well
so
said.
excited about this conversation, but I'm realizing we got about less than 15 minutes left, and y'all got something real exciting coming up on October 11th that I want to make sure to talk about.
Oh, no, terrific. God, I enjoy this. But I'm really also super, super excited about this conference. We have on October 11th, this Saturday, over at Women Building Up, and that's located on 401 State Street in Brooklyn, New York. We are doing an intersectional solidarity economy conference. It's a movement gathering, and it's called Building Solidarity, Building Power. And what's really exciting about this to me is, as a person who has been very interested and has supported the solidarity economy, I mean, these are tools that have obviously they've been around for liberation for years in terms of the 1800s and the 1700s. But to know that people are coming to really understand, as this system is disintegrating and it was never meant for us, that we could see not only how can we engage with it as far as what are the practical elements of what is a worker co-op, what are community land trusts, how do we think about collective land ownership, but also from a movement perspective. And when you have people like Kali Akuno, who is with Cooperation Jackson and also is with People's Network for Land and Liberation, yourself, David, along with the U.S. Solidarity Economic Network, these are people at the national level that understand and are seeding different aspects of how this work could be meaningful, not just for local economies, but for the movement. And then you have opportunities to encounter people like Maria Garcia, who's with the Cooperative Economic Alliance of New York City. And they have a map, like they've literally mapped out what kind of co-ops and what kind of solidarity, mutual aid, community gardens, where are they? How do you encounter them? How do you learn about if you want to become part of a co-op? This is the sort of thing you encounter there. And then there's, oh gosh, I'm so excited because you introduced us to this particular organization, and that is Shy Fresh Chicago. And this is a group that is out in Chicago, and they are formed by formerly incarcerated, largely Black and brown women. And this is a food service organization. They are spawning other kinds of cooperatives. And it's exciting to see that people are doing this kind of work. And to also have locally Brooklyn Packers, a co-op, and also to have Maharlika, which is a cleaning co-op, both really terrific to bring people together on a practical level, and then also to be able to think about what the meaning is for resourcing each other in the community of struggle and also for the community and the movement.
And our good friend Rebecca Lurie, our mutual friend, I should say, for both this program and us individually, writes in, it's all intersectional, where deep solidarity and cooperativism can fight white supremacy at its core. And Rebecca, of course, will be here. So y'all, look at here. If you are in New York City, please join me, Kali Akuno, Camille Kerr, a host of others who will be at Women Building Up in Brooklyn. We're going to drop this into the comments. I will, if you will subscribe to my Substack, very cleverly also called Redneck Gone Green. The Eventbrite is there. I think that we've already got something like 60 folks or more who are already registered, but there's still room for more, right? Isn't that right?
It is.
Yeah.
Kimberly, how many folks can we accommodate in that building where we are?
I think we could safely accommodate about 120.
Okay.
I think that's a good, yeah.
So the reality is this, y'all, that we've got good turnout so far, but there's still room. We're going to ask you to please do tickets. Again, the address 401 State Street in Brooklyn, this Saturday, October 11, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Please come by and say howdy. The other thing I'll say is, with much thanks to the folks at Democracy at Work, they have actually put together some materials so that everybody who comes is going to get an opportunity to say, all right, here's what you can do when you leave, right? So thank you to Democracy at Work for putting some resources in to ensuring that folks leave with resources. So, one of the things I like to say is, I hope that I give an entertaining talk when I go someplace, but I don't want to just be leftist entertainment, right? And I'd like it to be organizing. But here's the thing, y'all. When I leave, when Kali Akuno leaves, when Camille goes back to Chicago, y'all will still be there in Brooklyn or in New York City. The question is, what are y'all going to do together? That's when we'll know if we really organized anything.
Can I add one more thing in there?
Please
and
do.
That's for people to be able to actually reach the Eventbrite. I think what they need to do is go to democracyatwork.info, and that's where they can register. And so 100% everything you said, I really hope that that's where we're headed for people, that they connect up and they can see what they want to do, especially women coming out of the carceral state.
So Shane, I'm going to ask you to make sure that we get that properly either into the comment or otherwise. I know, Shane is a co-host at Redneck Gone Green, this one program. But for those of you who don't know, Shane's like one of the chief cooks and bottle washers at Democracy at Work. Between, I got to tell you, like Rick and Harriet and people like me, the folks who are on the program, like I'm grateful for it. But without Shane and Jason and Matt Benetti and a host of other people, this don't even exist, right? So Shane, I don't mean to embarrass you, right? But you make this thing work, and I want to make sure that we give both y'all and Democracy at Work the proper love and roses for helping to make this happen.
Well, thank you for that. That's a very, it's you guys are the reason I'm proud to come to work every day and everything we're able to do together. So
right on. So is it true that where do we find the Eventbrite, Shane? I want to make sure that folks have access to that and that
yeah, I can
we
put
that
the,
in the comments, right?
Yes, I can put the, let's see if I can do this from
Hey, look at here. I conjured Jason, right? And in the comments, y'all, I said I thought we were at about 60. Jason says 75.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
Jason, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was 70. It was
Jason to be telling me, hey,
77.
brother, I'm watching.
Yeah. If you just go to our website right here, democracyatwork.info, there's a big banner that says building solidarity, building power, with the date and the time. You click on that and you can register from that.
And I'll tell you, y'all, when you go to that, and I hope you will, an intersectional movement, you've got the People's Network for Land and Liberation. You've got the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. You've got CENIC, which stands for the Cooperative Economic Alliance of New York City. You've got CUNY, the City University of New York, and the Community Worker Owner. You've got Chai Fresh out of Chicago. I mean, what you're talking about are real players here. The Community and Worker Ownership Project, the Left Education Project. I mean, like you've got Brooklyn Packers, you've got the Maharlika Cleaning Co-op. I mean, like these are real players. And I'm really excited to say, Kim, not only is there going to be a panel, but you've arranged this so that folks are going to get into smaller working groups to be able to actually do work at the event, to actually go deep together. I mean, I'm really excited about what y'all have put together.
Well, thank you. And you know what? You've just highlighted a major omission on my part. The best collaborator outside of, is Rebecca Lurie. And working with her and trying to figure out a meaningful way to do this has been fabulous. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And so I'm grateful for that.
Right on. So again, Rebecca Lurie, y'all, is she describes herself first and foremost as a carpenter and a social change agent. She's also an academic who works at, again, the City University of New York and the Community and Worker Ownership Project. I also want to give a shout out to Abby Harper, who is one of her grad students who's just been a delight to work with. I mean, to me, straight up, y'all, organizing this event has shown us that the way we learn to work together is to do work together, right? Like it ain't rocket science, right? And we can do this. Like I want to say it again. We got this because we got each other.
Beautiful.
So look at here, Kimberly, I'm going to give you a chance for any final thoughts or final words before we close out the program.
Oh, man. I think you've taken every word out of my mouth. I think I am more than happy to just +1 the rest of it all. I feel that this has been just such a beautiful opportunity to reflect not just on what it is, but the roots of this, and to keep it together so that we can always have it in our vision. And that just is, it's a privilege to have that kind of conversation. So thank you for the platform. Thank you for caring about this work and for being so just like essential to the work in all of us. So I just hope everyone comes on out and that we can do more of this.
As Rebecca says in the chat, we make the we make the road by walking together. And I want to say to echo Kimberly Westcott to thank you, Kimberly, for coming onto this program. I want to thank Shane and Jason over at Democracy at Work. I want to thank Ruthie, who is always behind the scenes doing the work. And most importantly, I want to thank you, the listener, viewer, reader of Redneck Gone Green. Our community is growing because of you. So please like, comment, and subscribe. You can subscribe to the Democracy at Work platform on YouTube. But we also write a Substack, again, called Redneck Gone Green. That is growing. We've got now over 4,000, almost 5,000 subscribers. So we give you something to watch, something to read, and something to listen to. So please, I think, Shane, we are still putting this program out onto various podcasts so you can share the podcast with folks. At the end of the day, we're growing because you are making us grow. We come to you on the Democracy at Work platform every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Next week, our guest is going to be Ron Placone, who is a unapologetic leftist comedian. I think you're going to love it. I know I'm looking forward to that conversation. In the meantime, keep on keeping on. Can't stop, won't stop. Peace.
All right.